Welcome everyone to an organization-wide approach, how Mote sourced a new dam system and pitched the idea to stakeholders with Alexis Crabtree and Jaime Fogel of the Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium in Sarasota, Florida. If you're looking to join our cleverly named session, Hello Assets, deploying dam at Hello Fresh remotely, mostly by yourself, and in 3-ish months with Hello Fresh, head back to the agenda and click on track 2. Mote, as some of you may know and many of you don't, is home to the best looking manatees in the entire United States, lettuce and kale eating creatures of a unique presence in our planet. Jaime Fogel, one of our presenters today, is the director of the Arthur Vining Davis Library and Archives at the Mote Marine Laboratory. She has a master's degree in library science, graduate certificate in museum studies, and has spent more than 10 years experience working with special collections. Alexis Crabtree joined Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium as a graphic designer for the Community Relations and Communications Department about 7 years ago. In 2019, she was promoted to Manager of Visual Engagement. And we're delighted that they have put together a very thoughtful story about what does it mean to take two very talented professionals with an approach of library and curation, approach to visualization and expression, and bring them together around our field of digital asset management. On behalf of Henry Stewart, I welcome you both, and over to you both.
Hi, David. Thank you for that introduction. As David gave a preview, my name is Alexis, and I'm the Manager of Visual Engagement in the Communications Department at Mote. And shortly after I started at Mote about 7 years ago, I established and I continue to maintain Mote's dam system for photos and visual assets.
Hi, I'm Jaime. I'm the Director of the Library and Archives. I started at Mote about a year ago, and I'm responsible for the library catalog and the Archives Digital Collections website.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Mote Marine Laboratory is a nonprofit marine science research institution with more than 20 different research programs spread across 5 different locations in Florida. And we study everything from megafauna like sharks and sea turtles to issues like ocean acidification and coral research and coral disease. We have a robust education division and a public aquarium. In fact, we're currently building a brand new aquarium, state-of-the-art facility called Mote Science Education Aquarium, MOTEC for short. And even though our organization has so many diverse components, we've really worked to, Jaime and I, establish a digital asset management solution that could work for our entire organization. So we've look forward to sharing our perspective, and we hope that you'll find it helpful.
Just quickly before we begin, we want to acknowledge the Seminole Tribe of Florida, the Miccosukee, and other lost tribes on whose ancestral land Mote Marine Laboratory now sits. And we encourage everyone to share their own land acknowledgement in the chat.
So a little overview. Today we're going to tell you about our experience sharing a new digital asset management system that could be used across our entire organization and our experience pitching it to management. We'll touch on the sequence of events that led us to seek an organization-wide dam solution, the due diligence that we did in researching our options, and how we ultimately got stakeholder buy-in. We'll show you a piece of our actual pitch presentation and then share a few takeaways that we learned in the process. Just a quick note that we're still early in the implementation of this new dam system. So for this presentation, we're just focusing on the selection process that we went through and not the specific platform that we selected, but we're happy to answer any specific questions at the end. All right, let's dive in.
To take you through the sequence of events that led us to pitch our new dam system, I was hired in late 2020 to manage the library and archives. And at that time, the prime directive that I was given was the digitization of research on library materials to make Mote resources more widely available. As I began to familiarize myself with the collections and to develop goals, I realized that the current digital collections website in place is somewhat lacking, to put that mildly. So knowing that the archives and communications often share a lot of assets, I reached out to Alexis to learn about the systems that she uses. It turns out that the communications department was starting to outgrow its current system. So we teamed up, and as we continued our discussions, we realized that the need for a new dam system was more than just a library or a communications need, but really was a larger organization-wide need. So we began to look for a dam system which would meet the needs of our whole organization. We then presented our research to our immediate supervisors, who encouraged us to reach out to the different departments who would also potentially be using the dam system. And lastly, we pitched to our executive director.
As you can imagine, we did a lot of research investigating the different dam options out there. We used this spreadsheet, this is a screenshot, to organize our notes and thoughts about the different systems, which helped us uniformly compare them against the same criteria, and also helped us clarify our priorities when it came to what we considered to be essential functionality. We narrowed our options down to a single dam system that seemed the best one suited to our needs, but it was quite a bit more expensive than we had budgeted for in our current systems. And we were worried that the price would be a bit of a deal breaker. We had reached a point where we felt our supervisors needed to give their approval before we could pursue the idea. We wanted our supervisors to know that we had done our due diligence properly. So we created a one-pager handout, and that's a screenshot of it there on the right. That kind of just outlined the goals of the project, the essential functionality that we were looking for, the different systems we had researched, and lastly, why we felt that our top choice was the best option for Mote. Our supervisors were on board, thankfully, and approved our request to have meetings with other departments to learn how the dam system might work specifically for their needs. After all, if there was broader need throughout the organization, then a higher cost might be justified and possibly sourced from multiple budgets.
So we had meetings with many different departments across the organization to discuss their current setup and their needs. What kind of assets do they produce? How do they share assets? How do they currently find assets created by other departments? Although we did have a specific software in mind, we decided not to use the interviews as a vehicle for pitching our top choice, but rather as a venue for listening to the needs of our coworkers. Once they felt that we had heard and understood their specific challenges, they were really open and receptive to the idea of implementing an organization-wide solution that would address both their needs and the needs of other departments. Looking back, we would recommend doing this earlier in the process or even simultaneously with your software research, since the feedback from other departments could and should influence your choice of a dam system. But it's important to focus the conversation on their needs and use cases and not get hung up on the specifics of the software yet. In our interviews with everyone at Mote, we mentioned that we had a front runner, but we're very careful not to give any specifics. One, in case their feedback did change our selection, and two, we didn't want to get anyone excited about a particular software in case it was vetoed later. This was definitely a worthwhile process. We really learned a lot about the many different ways that our colleagues work, and everyone we spoke to was very excited about the idea of a single system used across the organization. This buy-in from other departments was invaluable for our next step, pitching our executive director.
When it came time to give him our presentation, we made sure our pitch was very, very well rehearsed, weeks and weeks of rehearsal. In addition to keeping the slides heavy on visuals and light on words, we also paved the way ahead of time. So it had turned out that the department interviews that Jaime just described seeded our idea in the mind of our executive director before we even entered the room. Apparently, following our interviews, our supervisors and other coworkers had made mention of our need for a dam system. So our presentation wasn't the first time our executive director was hearing about the problem and that we were working on a solution. We also made sure that our presentation properly explained both the problem and why our recommended solution would be successful. We even made sure to prepare to acknowledge an elephant in our room. There had been problems with the previous software rollout. We were prepared to address why that situation would not be repeated. And to be clear, that other software was not a dam system. It was organization-wide, but not a dam system. And it had left sort of a sour taste in his mouth on how that rollout had gone. So we wanted to separate the two scenarios in his mind, if he had asked. And finally, whether you're a nonprofit organization or a for-profit business, budget is always going to be a factor. Although we didn't have the funds officially lined up, obviously, before our pitch, we did come prepared with several possibilities for funding sources should we get the green light. So that's sort of an overview of the pitch that we gave to management, but we thought it might be helpful to also take you through part of our actual pitch presentation to demonstrate some of these specific elements in context.
So first, since digital asset management isn't a familiar term to everyone, especially here at a marine science laboratory, we illustrated some of the assets that are needed, used, and shared here at Mote.
We put together this graphic to visually demonstrate how Mote's many assets are currently spread through many different storage locations here at Mote. Clearly, it's a bit of a hot mess, then there's room for improvement, surely.
Next, we tied our need for a dam system back to Mote's strategic plan, a document that Dr. Crosby, our executive director, is very fond of and references frequently. That is a screenshot of it there on the right. Specifically, we emphasized how our strategic plan lays out goals for quite a lot of growth in the coming years, including increasing the number of staff, programs, and locations.
Next, we outlined what it would look like if we continued with our current status quo. So we talked about how we would still have to find other systems to resolve the issues we are currently having, at least for the library and communications department, but also for our new aquarium. Then, of course, if we had different systems, that would mean we would continue to operate in very siloed situations, which would be harder to overcome more and more as we continue to grow. Then we discussed the dangers that would arise from disconnected systems, including duplication of efforts, inconsistency, confusion, and brand disparity. And finally, we concluded this scenario with us failing to meet Dr. Crosby's directive for Mote to maintain our status as a world-class research institution. With that scary scenario in mind, we called this graphic back up to set the scene for our mic drop, if you will, of our presentation. It went something like this. So, Dr. Crosby, in order to meet the vision that's been laid out in our strategic plan, we propose a solution that will take Mote from this to this. The juxtaposition of these two graphics really helped our executive director visualize the core concept of a dam and how the one that we specifically are about to propose could work for Mote's many needs.
Before disclosing our specific software choice to him, we outlined the due diligence that we had done to get to that point. This slide walked him through how we had looked for a dam system that would meet our internal needs, working across departments and across locations, external needs, being able to share with outside researchers, educators, the media, and the public, and keep pace with our growth. We summarized that we had conducted interviews with 17 different departments, evaluated 13 different digital asset management systems, saw demonstrations of 8 of them, had 10 meetings and countless emails with our top choice, and asked hundreds of questions, all to narrow down to our top choice, the name of which we then revealed.
Then we walked him through our top 5 reasons why we felt that this particular dam system stood out to us compared to the other systems that we had evaluated. We even worked with our vendor to mock up a screenshot of one of Dr. Crosby's favorite marketing photos so he could see how a Mote asset would look and what kind of information that we could store with all of our different assets.
We had prepared several different examples comparing the current state of various digital assets that Mote produces against how our proposed dam system would improve access and sharing. Each of these screenshots here represent slides in our original presentation. We had planned to go through about half of our examples and then just click through the other half to show that we had broadly thought about all these different types of materials. But we were actually interrupted by our executive director before we'd even made it past the first 2 or 3 Having heard earlier mentions from our coworkers and our pitch up to this point, he was already on board with the idea that Mote could benefit from an organization-wide dam system. So we were both surprised and pleased and took the hint to skip through the rest of our examples.
So while we did skip through the rest of our examples, we paused at this slide before proceeding to the cost information, which is obviously what he was really looking forward to. We wanted to reiterate the many reasons why it was so important to take action on our proposal as soon as possible. In addition to the more abstract ideas that we cited about growth and asset degradation, we focused on the very concrete reason that our current dam systems would be coming up for renewal soon, and we wanted to act before those costs had to be incurred. Additionally, we emphasized how it would take time to populate the new system, and we wanted to be up and running before the new aquarium opened. By the way, if you're curious, that's a rendering of our proposed new aquarium here in Sarasota, Florida, and you can learn more about Mote Sea at moteoceansforall.org.
Finally, we concluded with the specifics of pricing. We wanted to talk about the pricing last, hoping that by this point, our executive director would be so excited that he felt our solution would be worth any cost. We even included this not so subliminal photo of him giving us the thumbs up. As we mentioned, our top choice dam platform was more expensive than the ones we had been using. So it was important that we came prepared with plausible funding sources. In this case, that included already budgeted funds, a pending grant application, and a potential donor. We closed with the assurance that while the cost may seem like a lot, we think the cost of not doing it is greater.
So that was a portion of our presentation that we gave to our executive director. To conclude today's presentation, we just wanted to wrap up with some takeaways that we have learned from the experience. So first, be forward thinking, right? So don't just find a solution to the issues that your organization is having right now. Try to envision how those issues might expand or evolve in another 5, 10, 15 years. You know, picture our spaghetti bowl of where all of our assets are located and multiply that times more locations and more staff and more facilities. So we definitely had that in our mind. Your organization's strategic plan is a great place to start, like we did, because your leadership has likely put in a lot of effort into identifying the challenges and growth that your organization is going to face in the coming years. And it's your job to ensure that recommending a solution that will continue to solve problems in the future and not become part of the problem again. One of the most important takeaways I feel that we learned from this experience was to prioritize engagement over dictation. In our experience, when an idea comes down from the top in a now you have to do things this way kind of style, it can sometimes lead to a little bit of resentment, grumbling like, well, they don't know what it's like out here in the trenches, right? So we want to avoid that. And we found that the interviews we conducted helped our coworkers feel engaged in our project. They shared the challenges that they were facing every day, the sticking points that made their jobs harder. And we listened. We asked for their opinions about what should be considered in the new system, and we really tried to take that feedback to heart. We evaluated each of our choices through the lens of how will this affect the research department? How will this help facilities? How will this help education? And to our surprise, our approach was really well received. Instead of throwing up obstacles or reasons why a universal system wouldn't work, they immediately started brainstorming solutions and workarounds or even protocol changes they could implement if the final system that we had selected didn't fit with their current processes. In other words, we learned that if you get your stakeholders involved early on in the process, they're more likely to become champions of your proposal instead of feeling like they didn't have a say. As we demonstrated, having their support of our staff across the whole organization really contributed to our success in convincing Dr. Crosby.
Another takeaway that might seem obvious, but is important, is knowing your audience. In this case, it manifested itself in several different ways, including how we presented our proposal to our coworkers and our supervisors. When setting up with the interviews with all those different departments, for example, we used the Find a Time feature on our calendar system to sort of pre-scout out times that worked for them and then sent the request in the form of a calendar invitation. That proved incredibly effective with almost every department accepting the invitation right away, and avoided a lot of back and forth emails trying to arrange a meeting. Are you available on Thursday? No, can you do Tuesday? We avoided all of that by just sending the calendar invitation. Another example was creating that one-pager handout to present our initial idea to our supervisors, because we know that that's a format that they prefer. When we put together our presentation for our executive director, we made sure to emphasize things that we know are his priorities, like the goals laid out in our strategic plan and budget. I'd even baked brownies that day because we know that he has a sweet tooth. So taking the time to translate your idea into the format that your audience is most receptive to can definitely be worth the extra effort. And a little chocolate bribery never hurts. And finally, preempt concerns and questions. Remember we mentioned that elephant in the room, that other software that hadn't really worked out. We decided not to put it in our slides, but we were prepared to address it if he asked. We had also preemptively worked with our development department to brainstorm plausible funding sources. That way we could help our executive director visualize how we could afford the solution. It's definitely better to prepare a response and not be asked than to be asked and not have a response.
All right, well, that's all the slides we have today. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope that we've provided some helpful takeaways and things to think about as you perhaps implement dam systems of your own. We'll stick around here, it sounds like, for another few minutes for questions. But otherwise, thank you guys so much. Feel free to email us. We've got our emails up here. We love to talk dam.
Well, and talk with confidence, and I hope more than a passing bit of pride in your accomplishment. What a delight to hear this, to have you have the chance to share this journey and this story, and the migration from whatever dark seas that other dam-ish system was swimming around into a very bright future for Motes. Thank you for the thought that went into this and for the initiative. It's a really world-class approach that you took, and you should give yourself each sort of at least a manatee nibble on your back.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun, actually.
It honestly has. We really turned out to enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, and I must say the brownies in the thumbs up picture, subtle. Well, maybe
dude, I'm telling you, we went all in on that. Everything we could to convince him.
Really, really nice. So some very nice questions have come in. One of them is from one of our attendees who is wondering if you could comment on plans and ideas for ensuring that your dam system gets adopted. There are so many different user groups and potential asset stores. And I think I'll parse this question to also include one of the interesting things about enterprise dam program management, which is what you're doing, is figuring out who's on first. And I think implicit in that, sort of the onboarding training question, instantiating a sense of aggregate ownership, comes the question of, okay, what is the training going to be? And maybe you could comment on that and a little bit about some of the change management issues in figuring out who's on first.
Well, that's, I would say, something we're actually about to face. So we haven't had to go through the actual implementation yet. We've been spending a ton of time setting up the system right now so that we're in a place where we can start onboarding. So we haven't attempted that specifically yet.
That's next, actually.
Yes, but we have been laying the groundwork. And I think the interviews that we've done, again, now that idea is seated in all of the organization's minds. So we have departments already asking, like, hey, are you still working on that system? Like, is that going to happen? Are we able to like work on that soon? And so I think that's going to be a good thing, because then they're going to be prepared for when we come to them and meet with them.
And we did send an update, like, hey,
we've been sending updates.
Like, it's coming soon.
Yeah. So then there'll be another format. They'll be used to like meeting with us to talk about this, and then it'll translate in theory to just kind of starting the training with them. And then I think part of your question was prioritizing kind of who gets onboarded. In our case, it was sort of easy because, as I mentioned, right, we have a current dam system that we're going to be transitioning out of. And that comes with a nice tidy deadline when our account is not being renewed and we need to transfer it. In my case, it's all of our marketing photos, research photos, it's our photo database. And so that's going to be transferring first. And we needed to make sure that the heavy users of that system get onboarded first, and then that those assets get into the dam first. So that was an easy first step for us. If that helps.
It's nice to have something like that where an application is being sunsetted, and
Yes.
it does answer that question: who's on first? Who's on first? Who's on first?
Yes.
Which can be very, very difficult in an enterprise undertaking like this. Related to this, we had another question come in about where will DAM report? You're making a big change from an image management system, I'll put that in air quotes, being respectful of how you're talking about it, to an enterprise application that's embedded throughout, among, and between asset stores all over Mote. So where does DAM report?
So Jaime and I should I share what we're calling ourselves the Poseidon users because it's like super admin, right? Like we have control of everything with our partner. And we are taking responsibility to set up the systems and then to train other high level users. So like if there's a contact in each department usually who is like the heavy user, or that person gets all the questions from their department for something new like this, we'll be sitting with them and training them and establishing what their protocols can be, helping them set up the metadata fields, all that kind of stuff.
It'll be, a tree, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. But basically I think the short answer is it will live with us. We've had really good experience tag teaming so far, even just with the pitching, and we plan to continue that. And actually our partner suggested, Trenchia, that we establish sort of like a governance plan, and that might even include like meeting monthly or frequent quarterlies even, to evaluate like issues that have come up. If there's new users that we need to have a higher level of training or less frequent training or whatever they might need, we could accommodate that and kind of do it as sort of a group process.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up having kind of a team of like the super users.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll find that your stewards or your ambassadors, kind of your dambassadors, I've heard them typically referred to, become
I like that.
so core. Yeah, there's one for you too, right?
I'm having visions of little ribbons and stuff.
I like it.
Right, exactly. By the way, it was suggested by more than one person that you don't talk about the elephant in the room, but rather the elephant seal in the room. So a little amendment.
Bravo.
That wasn't me, but I thought that was pretty good.
Yes, whoever that was, very clever. We reined in our sea puns or marine puns.
Yeah, we're usually pretty heavy.
But A+ for whoever suggested that.
I thought that was pretty good. It's pretty fun to read the chat on that one too. So, but yeah, the dam ambassadors, the stewards, can become your tentacles out to the organization. And I think you also may find, as many of us do, that governance turns into, I don't know if this is actually a word, but governances with the plural, where there can be a need for pretty frequent governance on the metadata front. For example, the statement of geographical declaration. I made one in my opening speech this morning, but if you went back 5 years to when we opened Henry Stewart,
Right.
I would have been in New York or San Diego or London and not sitting at home. That was not something we did socioculturally. So metadata often needs a very frequent governance. On the other hand, the longer term, if you're doing risk audit or risk analysis, or you're reviewing your insurance policy or your IP contracts for licensed images, probably not as often. Just a reflection that you might find helpful. So
yeah,
let's end. I'm going to give you each 30 seconds to answer an interesting question, which is, what was a surprise or a surprise difficulty or an unexpected win during this great journey that you architected for an important institution in our country?
A surprise win.
I mean, I can think of two.
Okay, go for it.
Dive right in.
One, when we did our pitch to Dr. Crosby, we didn't expect an answer that same day.
Yes.
That
was definitely,
and
definitely a
so
win.
the fact that he was on board there in the room was like a huge win. And we were so excited that he understood, you know, what we were going for.
We were fully prepared to walk out and wait a month.
Yeah. And then I would say the other, not surprised, but really pleasant and enjoyable thing has really been working with Terentia. They've been really listening to our feedback and the functionality and how we're hoping, you know, things will work. And they've really been listening and like, you know, like already implemented suggestions that we made. So that's been really awesome
excellent win.
process. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
and I guess I would say I was mildly surprised and really excited to find that our coworkers were super on board and excited, because like I said, we've been in situations where we're trying to implement something and they get a lot of pushback and resistance. Well, I don't think that's going to work. And what about my problem? That's not going to, you know, and we didn't face that because we went in like, we're here to listen. Like, tell us, like, come complain to us for a second. Like, tell us what you're going through. And then we'll sit and think about it. And we're like, in our heads, like checklisting, like, yeah, I think we can solve that problem for them.
And each of those conversations was very, very different and very, very interesting.
And that whole list we pulled up of different assets at Mote, we were like, that was after months and like, oh, I didn't think of that. They want to put that in there. We can totally include that. Yeah. So
okay. All right. I love this. And I wish we had another hour.